Hi, this is Ren.
And this is Casey.
And this is All Walks of Film.
Today we saw The Witch. The Vivitch.
The Vivitch.
Vivitch.
Yeah, seriously, look at the poster. It says The Vivitch, even though the movie is called The Witch. So, this was a really interesting movie because normally horror takes place in modern times. Or if it doesn't take place in modern times, it's usually like the 50s or 60s. You never usually see anything before then.
Or it's some kind of possession by a spirit from long, long ago or whatever.
Yeah, I mean, the closest you get to anything before the 60s would be like a flashback or something like that. Uh-huh. But this movie decided, hey, let's go all the way. Let's make a movie that takes place in
New England.
The 16th century, right?
Ish. Yeah, I mean, the family had actually immigrated there themselves from England, so pretty new Americas.
Yeah, so this was directed by Robert Eggers, and this is his first directing project. He's done production.
Feature length.
Yeah, he's done some shorts, which most directors have shorts under their belt. Yeah, he's mostly done production design, so, you know, as far as a first film goes.
We've had very, very promising directorial debuts lately from Nightcrawler and The Babadook and Selma and Ex Machina. All directorial debuts.
Yeah, and this is a promising debut from a director, at least from my standpoint.
Oh, and Tim Miller for Deadpool. Just found that out today, I think. I didn't double check on that, but I'm pretty sure that was his first film as well.
Oh, wow. Cool.
So, I mean, yeah, lots of really strong work from first-time directors. And yet the ones who are not strong are the ones who are getting entire franchises handed to them. Gareth Edwards.
Well, to be fair, he did have one film under his belt before.
But that's what I'm saying, is like, his debut was not very good.
I don't know, I haven't seen it, so I can't judge.
But I mean, like, compared to something like Nightcrawler? Really?
Well, they might
Nightcrawler might not have been the best example since that director had done a ton of writing before he started directing.
Yeah, same thing goes with writer-director of Ex Machina.
Yeah, he did a lot of writing too.
This movie starts off where they're in some settlement in New England.
A plantation specifically is what they keep calling it.
Right.
And I don't think they mean that in like a slavery sense. I think this is pre-slavery.
This is like right when people are coming to settle. This is before like any sort of independence or anything like that.
Yeah, exactly.
And they were Puritans, very much so. And like the movie gets into the puritanical society and the fears that come from people that are deeply superstitious and deeply religious.
But I wanted to know why specifically they got thrown out.
Because the father stole the chalice and then sold it.
No, just wrong.
For silver, remember?
Yes, but wrong. They had that with them when they travel. That had sentimental value to the mom, Catherine, and he sold it behind her back in order to get the little bear trap. It had nothing to do with why they got thrown out. It was a difference of belief. He was spreading around some sort of thing that went against their religious beliefs, and I want to know specifically what it was, and I don't think they really went into that.
Okay, see, I had
They didn't throw him out of their colony because he stole a silver cup.
Well, the chalice, that's a little bit different.
But it wasn't a chalice. They kept calling it a cup. Okay. It was a silver cup.
Sorry, when I heard that, I thought of...
We even see the cup, and it's not a chalice.
I was associating it with that.
Okay.
So they get thrown out. They're in the wilderness.
Because of the dad. Will, that's his name. But he has a whole family with him. His wife, Catherine, eldest daughter, Thompson, eldest son, Caleb, and then creepy munchkin kids that you just want to punch in the face.
Yeah, they did have punchable faces.
It was great casting, though, because they were, like, really pretty but really obnoxious at the same time. Kind of like dolls, and you're like, oh. Just horrible little things. Just, ugh.
So, they're in the wilderness. They have a little cabin, and the crops start failing.
Corn.
And Yeah, corn in particular. And then Thomason's playing a game of peekaboo, and then all of a sudden...
Oh, yeah, because they have a newborn as well, Samuel. That's right.
So she's playing peekaboo, and then all of a sudden the baby just disappears, and she doesn't know what happened. And then, it cuts to woman in red running with the baby. Then she takes off all her clothes, and then, murders the baby and, bathes in the baby's blood. And
you make that sound like so much more racy and graphic and creepy than it really was.
It's pretty racy for a United States movie.
Okay, here's what you see.
For an R-rated United States movie, that's pretty racy.
This was a rated R?
Yeah, you're used to...
I thought this was PG-13. Are you serious? This is rated R?
Yeah.
Why?
Because of, nudity and graphic violence.
The nudity is not even that graphic, for one. You see butts. Okay. Whatever. You see butts. Everybody has a fucking butt. That's not a big deal.
Okay. I want to see them put child murder into a PG-13 movie. Watch that be put into a PG-13 movie.
But there wasn't child murder.
There wasn't child murder.
In the plot, there was child murder. On the screen, at any time, there was never child murder.
Well, obviously, it was implied,
never happened.
But it wasn't...
Because what you see is...
the chunks of the body and everything.
No, it's not even. It's okay, so you see a vague outline of an old naked lady. I'm talking about witches from Macbeth, the Playboy Macbeth. And if you haven't seen it, it's not nearly as hot as you think. The only nude people in the Playboy version of Macbeth were very, very old women and little boys. It was super creepy and weird. So you see that. You see her with a stick, okay? Then it cuts, and you see the baby, and he's fine. And you see a hand on the baby, and he's fine. And you see this mushed up red stuff, and it looks like cranberry sauce more than anything else. There's no anything specific. And she rubs it on her body that is very classy, mostly off screen. You see a little bit of her ribs and the top of her hip. And that's all you see. There's nothing there.
But the implications are there. Obviously, we know what it is.
No, of course the implications are there, but I'm just
that would not be acceptable.
PG-13.
That felt PG-13.
And that whole movie felt very much like we have to tone things down in order to fit the rating, because everything was very classy off screen or blocked by something. Nothing's really specifically shown.
Well, from my understanding, they didn't care about the rating because it was pitched to Sundance. So, the Sundance audience doesn't really care about ratings to movies. So it's not
Well, in that case, what the fuck? Okay, for example, the first time you see the mom breastfeeding, okay, you see boob, you see baby head. You see one side boob and baby head, but there's something there. Okay, fine. The second time she's breastfeeding, it's from the clavicle up. You don't see anything going on.
Okay, well, the movie...
And that seems to be a thing to fit a rating. You can only say fuck so many times, it's like that. You can only have so much boobage in your movie.
Or perhaps the movie is being puritanical in its portrayal as well.
Okay.
I honestly think the rating of the movie is irrelevant.
Okay, sure.
So, Samuel goes missing, and Catherine is obviously grieving.
The mom, Catherine.
Yeah, I'm surprised that there wasn't even any sort of punishment to Thomason at this time, because it seems that...
Well, we skipped over it, so we don't know what she said about it. We don't know what happened there. So we don't know in particular why. There were grudging and resentment brewing, but they might be thinking on a rational level, I hate her for letting this happen, but she didn't really do anything, so I can't actually punish her.
Well, and they did believe that their sin led to their punishment. So,
well, they also thought it was a wolf.
Okay. Yeah.
I said also, not...
Right.
Those things were not exclusive to one another. I was just, they don't believe that it was a witch who came and stole Samuel. Well, the parents don't believe it was a witch who stole Samuel away to punish them for their sins. They thought God sent a wolf to take Samuel away to punish them for their sins and to humble them and all that.
Okay.
That's what I'm saying.
So, throughout the film, many of them are in denial, or they're creating a belief of things that are happening. I personally think the movie can be interpreted multiple ways, although you can watch this very surface level and think, A, B, C, this is what happened.
It was the devil. I don't agree with you, though.
Okay.
I don't agree with you, because there were a lot of scenes in the film that were happening on a one-on-one basis. Thompson is alone when Samuel disappears. Caleb is alone when he sees the beautiful witch. Let me think of. I mean, even the twins were basically by themselves when they saw the witch eating the goat for the first time. I think they were alone. It was either that or it was both of them and Thompson, but that's still 3 of them. And there was a lot of. Okay, so you can imagine. Well, obviously, the mom was by herself when she saw ghosts, but that was clearly ghosts anyway. You could imagine, okay, this is them. They're all crazy. They're all having delusions. Or you could interpret it as the devil. But you have 2 scenes that completely go against that all. Well, 3 scenes, really. You have 3 scenes that completely go against that. The first scene with the witch and the baby smudging, or whatever was going on. You have that scene where nobody saw that happen, and nobody thought that was happening. Nobody was imagining that. No, that was not in the mind's consciousness at that point. So if no one was there to see it, that was probably reality. Then you have the scene with Caleb's exorcism, where everybody is seeing this happen to him at the same time. They're all seeing the same thing, and he and the little evil munchkins are all speaking in devil speak
speaking in tongues,
but it wasn't really tongues, because tongues is like foreign. Okay. It was like a devil's prayer, and they're all in sync with one another as if they're all possessed by the same thing. That was happening with everybody there, so that can't be a thing of like they imagined it, like a mass hallucination. And then you have the ending where she goes to the fire pit and there's a whole bunch of other people there. So this isn't about her personally with the devil. You know what I mean? Right. So I would say even that shows that it can only be taken as a straightforward, a cult film.
Yes, but I do feel that the film's narrative can be allegorical to.
Oh, well, of course it can be allegorical, but if you're talking about on the plot of the movie level, it's not very ambiguous.
Yeah, I guess you're right about that. Yeah. I think there are ways to interpret it in other sentiments, but that's more for interpretation than what the film is explicitly saying. Similar to the end of Taxi Driver or other films where interpretations are created based on the context of the film than what actually happened in the film's narrative. So one of the things that I thought of while watching the film was I thought the movie was told from a perspective of the community that banished them, reporting about them and trying to explain to people what happened based on what they saw.
I mean,
so it's...
I don't really think so. I think your other idea that you told me earlier of the whole film is from the spiritual perspective of Thompson makes a lot more sense, because even besides the fact that she's a protagonist, the film opens on a shot of her eyes, and it's a long, lingering shot. This is who we're seeing for the rest of the movie.
Right.
It ends on her face.
I think the film is a conglomeration of perspectives, particularly Thompson's, but gathering from each one. Like, the baby goes missing. Well, she, in her head, obviously doesn't say it, but she, in her head, imagines the whole witch thing, because that's what legends would tell in the communities. going on from like 14th century about like werewolves, vampires, warlocks, all this stuff that would literally capture babies and do unspeakable things to them. I mean, that's part of the mythology of that time. And they would also go out and murder people because they suspected that they were witches or anything like that. And I will say that, unfortunately, the movie never gets into that aspect, which you and I both seem to agree that we kind of wish was somewhat included in the movie, at least the fear of it, or at some point showed like a witch trial or something like that.
Well, not even just that. There was a lot of stuff about the witch you see in the movie, who is also the devil in the movie, or they're two separate entities with the same roots or something. Like, all the stuff about them is so vague and fuzzy, and I think that's one of my bigger problems with and before anything else, because Ren was like, oh, so you think this is... I don't think this is an okay movie. This is a great film. This is a very, very good film. It is very well made and has a lot of great ideas and concepts behind it. It's executed very, very well. But I think one of the things is that the evil in the movie, which the film has outright made like, okay, this is definitely a thing. It's not in their head. This is not some other thing they're making up. This is a real force in the film. It never goes into anything with it. So you get like baby smudging. Okay. You get beautiful witch seduces Caleb, and she has this ugly hand. Okay. So she needs the youth to keep her alive. Okay. But then Caleb shows up, and externally he's fine. He's just cuckoo now. What the fuck happened to Caleb? What did she do? And you never know. And then you see all these horrible things that are done to him that have nothing to do with that. And then it turns out the goat's the devil, but not the witch. And then the goat kills the dad, okay. And then the goat but Thompson starts talking to the goat, and he promises her pretty things that I don't think she really wants. She says she does, but I don't really think so. And then he's like, okay, follow me. And they go to the witches, and they all start flying around. And one of them is holding a stick, like a broomstick. And that's the big bad. Oh, okay.
I think...
Oh, and a bunny. And a bunny with goat's eyes. I actually really liked that. I wanted more bunny. More bunny with goat's eyes. That was very specifically the thing, because the goat was the devil, but the devil was also in the bunny. And you could tell because the goat eyes. And just the bunny with the goat eyes was creepy. I hated it. That was awesome.
So, I know that you're trying to figure out the difference between the goat and the woman and then the coven. But
I get that they're all kind of the same thing in different representations.
I think they're separate entities. Like, if you want to talk about, that culture of what people's superstition was, there's, the coven of witches, and then there's, Satan, which oftentimes is depicted as a goat or a goat man.
Right.
And you did see at the end part, there was a man wearing boots and spurs talking to the woman, because you never cut back to the goat when the goat is talking to her. Mm-hmm. But you do see the feet.
Right.
And it's obviously not a goat.
Well, yeah.
So, I do believe that is either Satan or Pan or whatever people's interpretation is, because if you look at occult images... I
get it.
Okay.
I get that. I still think that it was weird that they weren't very developed. Like, not only just their characters and what they were doing, but also, like there were... I don't know, I just feel like if you're not going to be ambiguous with it, then do more.
I agree with you. I think that the movie could have gone more in that direction, but I think atmospherically it would have broken from some of the elements that they're trying to do, because it is really trying to get into the subjective fear of superstitious people. Now, whether or not that superstition actually exists, the movie seems to say that everything happened. And given the subtitle of the movie, A New England Folktale, you can interpret that as everything in the film happened as it happened, or you can start breaking it down in terms of what you understand actual events to be versus what hearsay was of events.
And honestly, that was kind of a thing with this movie, is that's what I was more expecting the movie to be. Because there's all this stuff of, like, at the time, people thought mental illness meant that you were possessed by evil demons, or if there was bad famine among the crops, it must have, been a curse of the gods, or there was a particular sort of disease that was being spread by really shitty wheat, and people thought that people affected by this were witches, and now there's a theory that that's what caused the giant witch hunts for the Salem witch trials. So I was kind of more expecting the movie to be kind of turning it on its head of everybody thinks it's all these horrible things, but you could interpret it in kind of like what we were trying to do with the Falling movie, where, you're sitting in the movie and you're like, what if they're not all crazy? What if it's lead poisoning? It couldn't have been, but, it's ambiguous. There could have been a real reason, or it could have been there could have been an actual physical reason, it could have been psychosomatic, or it could have been something otherworldly, That's more what I was expecting the movie to be like, instead of just outright, oh no, it's definitely the devil, you guys.
Yeah, but I mean, look at movies like Rosemary's Baby, or...
Love that movie.
The Wicker Man, which I won't get more into because you haven't seen it, but...
Not the bees! That's about it.
Oh, God. Don't worry. If I strongly recommend, if you've seen the Nick Cage Wicker Man, I'm sorry, but I strongly recommend watching the original 1970s one.
Yeah.
Because it's amazing.
Okay.
At least I think so.
But your point is?
Well, when talking about either paganism or Satanist stuff, oftentimes it's usually brushed over or usually very simplistic, but the film is trying to tackle something else. And I think the hard thing for me with this film is, like, I'm desperately, because knowing the trend of movies that talk about the occult, talk about Satan, and I'm trying to figure out what the ulterior meaning of the film is, because there has to be something more than the surface level. Okay,
so let's break it down a little bit. The movie features a predominant theme of man is evil, man is sinful, we need to change our human nature in order to be good. Trying to go down the path of goodness causes them all to go crazy and do horrible shit and all the things that they never meant to do, and then the one girl who has been passed over on all the horrible things and is the lone survivor sees the fall of humanity around her and turns to her inherently evil human nature.
It's interesting that you said that because, especially in that amazing sequence where Caleb...
The eldest son?
Yeah.
Yes.
Where Caleb has that possession, that spiritual awakening, and death.
I love that whole scene.
The cinematography in that scene, how it follows the boy and everything,
whole time.
It's absolutely amazing.
Fantastic.
Yeah, I was blown away by it. But I think the apple is representative of the Garden
original
of Eden.
Sin. It works twofold. Yes, the original sin, but more specifically to the story, he tells the last sin he commits before he dies is he lies about going apple picking and how they didn't see any apples. And his last lie chokes him. But I mean, I think they very specifically picked out of anything he could have lied about trying to go find an apple specifically to evoke Garden of Eden. Yes.
Right, and also to evoke Snow White as well.
Okay, the poison apple. I mean,
the poison apple.
Yeah, because I mean, it is like this icky, rotten apple.
Yeah, you also have, Hansel and Gretel with the little house that the witch is in.
Oh, the little hut?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, sort of ish. Little hut with the witch in the woods. But I mean, I feel like that's not...
It's drawing on a lot of, typical elements of myth and folk tales that people would tell to scare the shit out of children.
Right, I agree. And I think that might have also... I'm not going to be very specific about this point, but I think that there is something where they're like, this is a folk tale. Let's evoke fairy tales and, silly stories when talking about Christian religion in very serious settings, very puritanical. We take this shit very seriously. This kid who lied about going apple picking choked to death on an apple because of his wicked evilness. Like, that's pretty fucking hardcore.
Yeah, but I think...
religious-wise, and I think that there is something to emulate that to fairy tales.
And I also think that the film evokes this subjective reality that deeply spiritual people have of situations. Like, I mean, look at, heaven forbid, look at elements of the Bible or religion in general, how it's told now. Where there are elements of it where you're like...
Why did you say it like that?
Really, I'm pretty sure we have people listening that are...
Well, I don't think that it's... Yeah, but I don't think that it's wrong to hold up a movie that talks about religion to the Bible. I mean, that seems like a pretty quick connection to make there.
All right, so, essentially...
Sorry.
Essentially, the movie does seem to illustrate these things in the subjective point of view. I mean, like, you look at some of the stories in the Bible and you're like, none of this stuff is happening right now. Can I believe this? Or, is it just based on faith? Did this actually happen? Or is there another interpretation to it? I mean, look at some of the stories in the Bible where you're looking at it from, like, the surface level and you're just like, wow, that's pretty crazy. But then if you look at it on the subjective level, or if you try to break it down by parable, that it equates to something else.
I think you might need to give an example.
Okay, so one example, probably the most famous example, is the prodigal son.
Okay.
Which is about a father that gives things to his sons. One of the sons fuck up, goes out, does a whole bunch of shit, comes back. And before he even apologizes, the father, welcomes him in. That whole story is supposed to be about God's acceptance. So I think sometimes when people tell folk tales, there's another meaning to it.
I mean, obviously, like there's a moral to it.
Yeah, there's a moral to it. There's a fable and everything.
I thought you were talking about there's crazy stuff in the Bible, like the parting of the Red Seas. But if you look at it another way, that could have actually happened. Okay, I see what you mean. Yeah. I
mean, there's some things that you could interpret, case, like the blood of Jesus, the body of, No,
I agree with what you're saying about there being a moral to the story, which is what was really bugging me earlier. I was like, what the fuck is the moral to the story then? And it's not just that on the fact of this is a folk tale, this is a fable, there's a moral to it. There's a moral to a movie, no matter what the movie is, in almost every case. Really, unless it's turn your brain off, whatever. But even movies like that will still have certain ideologies that are in place.
I think the movie is illustrating how religion can turn the closest people against each other. Each and every person. I think that's what the film is trying to allude to. Because you could see at one point, everybody is at everybody's throat in the movie. If you threw out the occult, if you threw out the witches and just said, hey, they went crazy because they were confined, add those elements in later, obviously. But if you take that out, I think it's illustrating the fact that if you separate yourself so much, to a cause, like deep religious belief, it will cause you to do horrible things. And throughout a lot of the film,
that just seems to be such an odd message for America 2016. Most people don't really believe in God anymore.
Right.
I mean, even a lot of people who still claim that they're religious are religious in name only.
But it might be illustrating a certain community in America that's still prevalent. Like the community that smaller communities, smaller town communities where things are a lot more tight knit. We grew up in the city. City life, country life, very different.
They're never gonna see this movie. If not just because I'm saying like they would not pick to see the movie. I'm saying the movie is not widely enough released for that.
Oh, just wait until it comes out on Redbox.
I mean, I guess so, yeah. But you're talking about small rural areas.
Redbox, Netflix.
No, I know Redbox. Like, yeah, I know, but I'm just saying, like...
I mean, that... I would have to do research on the director, but it's possible that he came from, a small rural background. And yeah, I mean, in rural communities, things fester. Mm-hmm. Suspicions fester. I mean, we just watched Making a Murderer.
Yeah.
I mean, it happens. People create a mythology around things. And sometimes, especially with deeply religious people, that are in small communities, like, it's not in the city, obviously, because the city is like a melting pot of like different things, and half the time people don't even fucking know each other. But in small communities, there does seem to be, a strong religious conviction that people have. And, like, here's an example. The Appalachians. Are you familiar with the Appalachians?
Yeah, I got you.
Okay. So, very isolated people. Sometimes their beliefs are very different. Mm-hmm. But if there's a difference between them, they might come to each other's throats. I mean, there's a lot of stories about like families like going against each other and stuff. And I think in the film, their religion was their greatest crux. Like they held everything to God, mm-hmm. But their family was falling apart. They kept on focusing on God. We need to change this. God, we need to change this. When it's family, we need to change this. Family, we need to change this. So I think that the film is trying to illustrate this idea that so many religious people don't. I mean, I guess a good example would be homosexuality. Homosexuality causes people to get at people's throats. In conservative families, yeah, I think homosexuality in tight-knit communities will cause families to go at their throats. And it's funny because the behavior that people have in this film mirrors when somebody comes out in rural communities, deeply religious rural communities. Like there's like banishment, there's, there might be somebody who's supportive on the side, but then they go at each other's throats. And, sometimes like kids that, sometimes a sibling or whatever, will go at their parents or they'll go at their brother. It turns into an ugly picture. And I'm not saying that the movie is alluding to homosexuality, but I'm talking about like the religious aspect that ruins families. Like, if you didn't have this belief that it was so wrong, you'd be able to have a family fine. But your religion literally is causing you to ruin your family.
Okay. So you think Will is gay?
No. I'm talking about.
I knew that wasn't what you were trying to say. But how does what you just said relate to the film then?
The fact that people oftentimes separate from the closest people because they feel that they have an understanding of religion in a way that other people don't. Mm-hmm. Have you ever seen the movie The Book of Eli?
No, I have not.
Okay, well, I can't reference it then.
Okay, so part of my thing I was talking about earlier with like what is the devil / the witch? Like, what are they doing? Or not what are they doing, but why? Why them? Just because they're there? Okay. And I had come up with some ideas about, like, specifically what everyone was being punished for, sort of. And the interesting thing is, the 7 deadly sins apply to all of them, besides Thompson. Thompson is a special case I want to get into later. The father says, towards the end, his sin is pride. Okay, fair enough. Easy. The mother's is anger. Catherine's.
Right.
Caleb's is lust. The older son, obviously. And the twins is sloth. Pretty easy. Fucking twins. God. But I kind of thought, even though Will was the one who specifically pointed out my sin of pride, which would lead kind of to deadly sins, I was like, well, doesn't the 10 Commandments make more sense? Especially because Caleb is punished for telling a lie, which thou shalt not bear false witness against thy neighbor is one of the 10 Commandments. It's a pretty big one. And it is very specifically used in the film. He doesn't tell a lie. He tells a lie to cover up for someone else, to talk to, somebody else. There's a neighbor involved, kind of.
The 10 Commandments works better because honor thy mother and thy father, then thou shalt not covet.
Which is the father's sin because he steals the cup. So he has coveted.
Yeah.
And then the twins, thou shalt not make false idols, thou shalt not worship other gods before me. And they're singing songs about how Black Phillip does this, and Black Phillip does this, and Black Phillip makes the world, and they do treat Black Phillip like he's a god who speaks to them.
No, so
that fits.
The 10 Commandments is definitely there, and according...
But I had an if with that. I had an iffy thing with that goes back to the beginning of the movie, actually. Is with Thomason, sorry. There's a whole... I kind of want to get into why the fuck did she get passed over out of everybody in the family. But going back to originally at the beginning of the film, she's saying a prayer. She's like, forgive me for I have sinned. I have not kept the Sabbath day. I secretly play on the Sabbath day. I haven't honored my father and my mother, and all the other commandments I have broken in thought and mind. And I'm like, so you've been worshipping false idols, you've been daydreaming about committing adultery, you've stolen, you've been coveting, like, really? Like, I'm just like, I don't really believe that. Plus, there's never a time when anybody takes the name of the Lord in vain. That never happens. I was kind of waiting for that one moment when somebody to be specifically like, fuck you, God, or something. And that never happened. That was the one thing that, no matter what, nobody ever fucked with.
Right.
No, that's not true. Caleb kind of did right before he died.
Yeah. But he was possessed at the time.
He was possessed, and it wasn't... I thought it was going to be like a big moment, but that never really happened. And so I thought that the 10 Commandments one was kind of a little bit iffy, because you've got all this other stuff that you can't... just doesn't really fit into the movie.
There are a couple things that I've heard about myths and legends of the time, and superstitions and rumors and everything like that, that I listened to 2 podcasts, and, if this sort of thing interests you, I highly recommend you checking out the podcast Lore. It's like a 20-minute podcast, and like each podcast goes over like some legend, and it also talks about the people of the time and like things that people have done because of that, like hearing stories about, women that were tortured because people believe that their wife was a doppelganger, or... Oh,
yeah, because that actually is like a mental illness that you can have, where you look at somebody and you think that they're not themselves.
Yeah, and there's like a whole mythology to that. There are so many myths that you can make amazing films of the time. So I hope this movie is successful, because I kind of want to see those movies. Mm-hmm. Like, I kind of want to see more film adaptations of like this era, and possibly even earlier, talking about the time. Mm-hmm. Another film that I forgot to mention earlier was Brotherhood of the Wolf, which is a movie that talks about the Grey Wolf of France and people's fear about like being destroyed by this like 10-foot tall wolf. There was legend of that, and so they would just kill all the wolves in France, and because they thought it was like a werewolf or something like that. Yeah. So there have been many horrible things that have been outcomes to this. This film really just got into the myth.
Right.
I would like to see another film get into both. And Brotherhood of the Wolf does actually get into that sort of thing. But Brotherhood of the Wolf is a movie that's made for people that are a little bit more cynical, as far as religious belief and, superstition and everything like that.
Mm-hmm. But just real quick, going back to what I was saying before, part of the reason why the Ten Commandments doesn't fit is because Catherine never breaks any of the Ten Commandments.
Unless she was the witch.
She was the witch?
Well,
even if she is the witch, you still never see her, she still doesn't break any of the commandments except for
there's
maybe thou shalt not kill, and that's about it.
There's one scene that I'm questioning.
Uh-huh.
And it's the scene where she's with her brother. They get separated. But then, what does her brother stare at? And what is the first thing her brother stares at when he sees the witch? The bosom.
No.
The exact place on the bosom. He looks.
That's not the first place.
What's the first place that he looks at?
Her foot. Because she comes out of the doorway and she just has the little foot.
Okay.
And then, she comes out and she has this cloak around her, and then she comes back and she's got her boobs pushed up to here or whatever.
Okay, but I don't know if he was staring at her feet, but
well,
I'd
that's
have to watch
all
that
he
scene.
could see of her, so I'm going to assume yes.
Okay.
But, okay.
I don't know.
Okay, so he's looking at boobs, because he is a teenage boy.
He's looking at boobs, even though it's his sister's.
And her distinct lack of boobs, in any case.
It's femininity.
No, I get it.
It's possible that there could have been an exchange with them. I'm talking about if the film is actually...
What does that have to do with the mom, though?
What does that have to do with the mom and her, getting pecked at her breast and stuff?
No, what does that have to do with the mom not breaking the Ten Commandments?
But you said that she did.
No, I just said she did. Her
malice.
No, she had one of the 7 deadly sins. She was angry, but other than that, she did not break any of the 10 Commandments. She had no gods before her. She did not make idols. She did not take the name of the Lord in vain. She, as far as we could tell, kept the Sabbath day holy. We never see her specifically, don't do that. She doesn't have parents, so no, honor your father and mother. She doesn't kill anybody. She doesn't commit adultery. She doesn't steal. She doesn't lie, and she doesn't covet.
So, she was the sacrifice that needed to be murdered in the film because she was pure then.
I don't think she was pure because she was fucking crazy and tormented.
Well, but in
the story, she was Job. I mean, she says that I'm a Job's wife, but her only confession she makes is, I've turned cold. I don't feel anything. But that's not really a sin to any degree.
One thing that I think is really interesting, and one thing that definitely makes me think, is the scene where she's dreaming of her son.
Uh-huh.
And then she has her baby, suck on her breast, and then it's a raven pecking at her breast. And then she wakes up and she has the blood there. But when she has the confrontation with Thomason, there's no blood.
That's not true. I was looking for it. Her hair was covering that area, so you couldn't really tell. It was not overt, but you can overtly see that it wasn't there. I was looking for it, believe me.
I was looking very carefully, and I'm going to say it wasn't there.
It was covered. I'm not going to say
that means it wasn't there. That could be a continuity error. That could be a major continuity error that they tried to get away with having their hair covered up. But I don't know. You would think at some point in the exchange, after she kills her mom, you would think that you would see it because her hair is in a different place. You do not see it.
Her hair is not in the same place. It's always covering it.
Not after she gets killed.
After she gets killed, she's covered in blood and tossed over on the side, and you can't see her anyway.
She's covered in blood in the back. Look at the front.
You couldn't see the front! There's never a part where you're close enough to her after she gets killed.
I'm telling you, you don't see it.
I don't believe you.
Okay, well, once this movie comes out on DVD, I'll try to get a screen cap
Okay,
on
just so you can make your point, fine. But the thing about Thompson is that, like I said at the beginning of the film, I didn't really buy that she was doing all this shit. But throughout the film, she only breaks 4 of the 10 commandments, but they're pretty specific ones. So, like, she says she doesn't keep the Sabbath day.
According to the Bible, all you have to do is break 1, and all sins are seen as equal. It's not like, any specific one.
That wasn't my point. Okay. You didn't let me make my point.
Okay, make your point.
She says that she doesn't keep the Sabbath day, which we had already covered before the film. By the end of the film, she murders somebody. She does not honor her father and mother because she calls her dad a hypocrite, which is like one of the worst things you can say in the Bible. Because when I was a kid and I was like, when I was listening to the New Testament and Jesus would say, "You hypocrite," I'm like, ooh, you make that sound like a 4-letter word, Jesus.
Wouldn't that be bear false witness? No, that would be...
No, you hypocrite. She's calling her dad names. She says that he's ineffective and he can't do anything besides chop wood.
Well, and
that is dishonoring her father.
I did like the scenes where the father was chopping the wood because it was clearly a cathartic moment for him.
I liked it too. She murders and she doesn't bear false witness against her neighbor, but she does lie to the younger sister, which is like, "I'm a witch and I'm gonna eat you." But she commits all these sins, and when it comes to like the 7 deadly sins, I mean, she doesn't have gluttony, sure, but she has pride. She says that she doesn't attend to her whatever. She's slothful. She has anger, but I don't think she really has greed or gluttony or envy in particular. But then something else that makes her different from all the other kids, her parents, because her parents were both baptized, but she was the only child who was baptized out of the 4 of them. Although I don't really know how that works, because they specifically point out that Caleb wasn't baptized, that if he died, he would go to hell. But he was alive when they were in England, at least. He was alive when because he and his sister were talking about, "Oh, do you remember in England?" So he was alive when they were in England and had that community. He was definitely around when they were part of the plantation. Why the fuck wouldn't he be baptized?
That might have been what caused them to break off from the community, because different people of different Christian faiths believe different things about baptism. Some people believe that, you have to know and accept Jesus into your heart, and then you can be baptized. Whereas other people believe that people should be baptized at birth. Mm-hmm. That was a huge divide in the church.
Yeah.
And given the time period that the film is made, that's obviously why people fled from Europe to go to the United States. For simple beliefs like that would be considered hypocritical if you're talking about the church.
Right. Okay, I guess so. But I thought that was something that was keeping her safe throughout the movie, was the fact that she was the only baptized child. But then that doesn't really count for the parents, because they were presumably also baptized. And
I will say, there is a lot of the film, especially the faith aspects, that are ambiguous. You don't know exactly.
My thing is, I couldn't tell if she was being spared throughout the film because she was the most pure, or because she was the most innocent, or the most evil, comparatively. Because she did more evil things than everybody else in the movie, especially Caleb, and even Samuel. What the fuck did Samuel ever do? He was just a kid. So I was like, well, maybe she's the most evil, but then they didn't really make her evil enough for that to be true. I don't know.
Well, it does seem to be in today's society, and I don't know if the director was trying to allude to this, that the most wicked are the most rewarded.
Well, the other thing
people
too
that
is I was like,
greedy and, do the most horrible, selfish things are the ones that, wind up succeeding.
Well, also the thing that just came up to me as like the most likely of any option is it because she's a pretty young woman? Because there's the whole thing where Caleb is lusting after her. They're emphasizing that she's coming into her womanhood. The mom is like, she's going to be a woman now. We need to get rid of her. And I'm like, which, by the way, I was just in the theater and I was like, that makes a lot of sense. She's the most capable and the most helpful on your little farm. So you're going to sell her off to another family to have less... Sell them the Munchkins! What do you need them for? They don't do jack shit.
That would not happen because, according to the society of that time, the boys mattered, the women didn't. It was a sexist society.
But she's helping them. If they're trying to alleviate the burden of the family, why take the most helpful one? It's she and Caleb doing the work, and the Munchkins do nothing.
Because they might have viewed Caleb as the father, took Caleb out to go hunting.
I know, and they say the whole thing of, like, Will, if you die, does that mean Caleb's going to be the head of the house now? I get that. Like, I get that she's not really going to be, like, in charge of anything. Well,
there are plenty of stories.
Why get rid of the kid who's actually doing shit to help you survive?
Well, they were probably going to marry her off or something.
No, they were just like, let's take her to another family. That was it.
Okay.
But the other thing, too, with that is they're like, she's becoming a woman now. They keep going to that. And then also, except for the one lone male devil, all the witches are obviously women. They're obviously all post-pubescent women who are naked and shit. I'm like, is that really all it is? It's just that she's a woman who's hit puberty, therefore let's go snatch her up.
Given the time period, women, unless they are mothers or elders, were not really respected by society. And even by their families.
No, I get that. I'm talking about in terms of all the things happening in the film. Why she was the one who wasn't punished. Why she got away scot-free, essentially, until the devil turned her at the end of the film. And I'm like, is it seriously just because she's a pretty young woman? As opposed to, is she the most innocent or the most evil?
I'm not sure.
But exactly, like, it's weird. It's not ambiguous, but it also doesn't feel concise either.
I would actually have to do a little bit more research, especially on, like, the myths and superstitions of the time, because I know that I vaguely know of some of the specifics that the movie talked about. You know, it's like, the circle of women and then the goat and all that stuff.
Of course. So, I mean, it was not like stupid horror movie, kind of thing. It was very smart.
So overall, I thought the movie was pretty strong.
I thought it was good. I liked a lot of the visual elements. I liked the writing. I liked the commitment to the time period, and I liked that everybody spoke in the correct dialect. I liked the general plot of the story, and I liked all the characters except for the Munchkins, who were appropriately hateable, and how they all related to each other. And I don't think it was a strong movie. It didn't hit anything with me. There was never really a part where I was hooked into it. It is a very good movie, but like I said, it's somewhere in between ambiguous and specific on this weird meandering level that I'm just kind of like, okay.
I don't know.
And it's a very not stupid movie, too. It's a very smart movie. It avoids all the shitty horror tropes. But, I mean, it's well written and it's well made. I'm not saying like, this is a dumb movie. I mean, it's possible that I just don't get it. That happens sometimes, There are so many works of art out there that are told from all these different perspectives. Nobody's going to get all of it, but
I think especially with the imagery that the movie invokes and the movie alludes to, that we ourselves have to do the research. Like the stuff with the bunny, the stuff with the goat, the stuff,
but I mean,
talking about...
But that's outside of the film. I'm talking about the film by itself, on its own two legs. Like, what do you get out of it?
On its own two legs, I think it's a very surface level film, as you said, but, there are elements that could allude to other things.
No, you're missing my point, and I'm not saying surface level or whatever. I'm saying by itself, without outside influences.
I don't think the movie gives a shit. I think the movie is set on its time period and is basically like, if you don't get it, do the research.
That's not my point. My point is, what do you get out of the movie? As the movie by itself.
What do I get out of it? What do I get out of the movie? It's about a family that runs amok because of their superstition.
No, I'm saying, what do you get out of the movie?
What do you mean? What do I get out of the movie? What did I think of the movie?
Yeah.
Or did I think it was effective? Yeah, I thought it was effective. What did it make you think
about? How did it make you feel?
Honestly, some of the holy shit moments that I had, you didn't have. So I can't really relate that to you. Like, when I saw the fucking baby get murdered, I was like, oh shit. You don't see this shit in American movies. You might see it in foreign films, but you definitely don't see it in American films. So I was judging it based on, oh, this is a movie from the United States, so it's going to go this way. And then they kill a baby and a dog in like the first 20 minutes, and I was like, okay, no holds barred. So where are they going to go next? And I like the deliberate pacing of the movie. I thought it was very atmospheric. I thought that, the dark, sense of foreboding in the film worked for the narrative. It also reminded me a lot of the movie The Village. Mm-hmm. Have you seen The Village?
No.
Okay. All right. So there are a lot of different stories that it reminds me of. Mm-hmm. So I like that. And based on like the myths of the time and such. But I'm not really sure what you're getting at. So can you...
I'm saying, if you like this movie so much and you're like, this is amazing and I fucking love it, you must have gotten something out of seeing it.
Well, I thought that the atmosphere was there. I mean, let's put it this way. This movie had very good moments. This movie had very horrific moments. This movie had an atmosphere and a tone set that I haven't fucking seen in horror films for 15 years. So please, spare me.
So what you got out of it was refreshing, it was new, it took you someplace you hadn't been before.
Exactly.
Okay, that's fine. That's what I'm getting at. What did you get out of it? What did you experience that you liked? What did you get? So what you got it was something new. That's cool.
Yeah, it was something new. I haven't seen this setting in a horror film before. And this movie wasn't a kind of horror movie. This movie
was a horror movie.
Yeah.
Like straight up.
And I was actually afraid before seeing the movie that this movie was going to be like a kind of horror movie, but not really.
Like It Follows, that sort of thing? Like
no, I thought it was going to be like, the fucking Crucible or something like that, which of course this was an influence from the director, he said himself.
Right, okay.
So.
Okay. But my thing with the movie is that I didn't really get anything out of it. I didn't relate to it on any level. There was one part where I was like, holy shit, and that was when she killed the mom, but I never really had a part where I was like, I fucking love this, or I feel this in any way. I can't control that. Like, I have a stars rating, and my rating is like 3 means it wasn't a waste of my time. 4 means I really like it on a technical level. And 5 means I like it on a technical level and it gives me the feels to some capacity. And to me, this is 4, where it doesn't give me the feels.
To me, it would be a 5.
Well, that's
there
fine.
are a lot of parts that I feel that I have to do either more research on the time period or look at the film again. There are a lot of unknowns that I have of the movie where I'm just setting it to the side and saying, can I interpret this? But there are plenty of movies that I love that I can't interpret, and it's not because I can't interpret them. Sometimes they're movies that can't really be interpreted, like Eraserhead. Fucking love that movie. Explain that movie. And David Lynch will tell you that you're wrong.
Yeah. But all I'm saying is that the feels is something you can't really control. And it doesn't say anything good or bad about the movie. That's just a personal thing that you experience on a case-by-case basis. I do not feel this movie to any respect. You can't change my mind about that.
No, I can't. I will tell you, I'll tell you guys, I felt the complete different, like I was feeling the movie like throughout.
And that's fine. That's why I'm asking, like, what do you get out of it? Why do you like it? And you explained it, and that makes sense, and that's fine. I'm just saying I don't. And I honestly think a big part of it is just because it is so heavily religious, which I appreciate. I do. And that was really interesting on a logical level for me to see. But I'm in a very odd, distinctive camp over here where I grew up heavily religious influences from my outside family, But my direct parents were not religious at all. But I still learned a lot of the mythology. I know a lot of the customs. And from different denominations, because all my family are all different denominations to different respects. I know a lot about religion, but I've never bought into religious faith, and I've never rebelled against religious faith. So I don't see it in either positive or negative. I just have a very flatline reaction to it.
And from a subjective point of view of somebody who did grow up religious and did, have moments and things with my own faith and then broke away from it, I can relate to the movie a little bit more with that. And I love faith-based movies, and this was a very faith-based movie. So, yeah, I do have a bias on that.
Well, that's not wrong either. That's just how we relate to the film in different ways. I'm just trying to illustrate to you what I mean.
Right. I mean, of course, every movie that comes out, there's some subjective point of view that you're going to get from the movie. You can't just like a movie on the surface. There's always going to be something that you bring into a movie. There's something about your background that might not have anything to do with the movie that will cause you to view the movie in one way or another.
Exactly.
And I think that, at least from, our experience, it can be polarizing.
And here's the thing, there are certain religious things that I can get into. Like the movie Noah, I think is a fantastic movie. I love that movie, and I'll stand up for that movie for forever. And part of it is that I can appreciate it on both a faith-based level and an agnostic level. Well, agnostic, not atheist. And I like that the film can work in both ways. And you could talk about it in both ways, and it's really interesting and compelling. And this film, I just don't feel. I just don't feel.
I'm trying to interpret it in both ways, but with deeper reads in the film, probably this is a film that I might have to break down.
Yeah, that's why I've been encouraging you the whole film, let's break this down.
Well, I mean, actually, watch it and break it down.
Oh, I mean, yeah.
Dissect the film in order to, I guess, get what I get out of the film.
Right. I don't know, the film I just don't get anything out of it because, I mean, yes, I appreciate it on a lot of different levels, and I'm not going to say that I didn't enjoy it because I liked watching it, and you're right, it's very atmospheric, but I didn't feel like I'd never seen it before. I didn't feel like I related to it in any particular way. I didn't feel like I was directly affronted by anything or provoked in any particular way. It just sort of watched it. I was like, that was good, okay. And this is on a purely feels level. This is not on an aesthetic level or on a objective level.
Right, because aesthetically, I think that there are certain elements that you can't even.
No, of course, it's incredibly well made, and there were a lot of parts where I was thinking on an objective level, wow, this is really amazing that they did it this way, or I really appreciate what they did here, or this links to this, but on an emotional level, there was just nothing there.
And on an emotional level, I had the connection.
Yeah, and that's fine.
So let us know what you think. Did it affect you? Did it not? What's your background, as far as religion or anti-religion? Are you a Satanist? Did this movie appease you? Oh, one thing I gotta say before we leave is I went to the ticket counter and said one for Hail Satan, and the guy was so in the zone. I think it was because it was early morning.
It was morning, yeah.
Yeah. But he was just one for Hail Caesar.
Yeah.
And I was like, no, the witch.
The other thing before we go that I have to fucking bring up, these assholes walked into the movie theater. They didn't come into the theater, mind you. They're at the door, in the tunnel, away from the audience.
Yeah, but somehow they feel compelled to actually open the door.
Hang on. So they come through the door. They hang back there at the doors. The scene before the last scene of the film. And loud enough for the whole fucking theater audience to hear, they say, what's this movie? Oh, it's something new. What the fuck are we watching? What is this? But then don't actually come into the movie to watch it, or come in and make a scene of how dare you heathens, whatever the fuck, because that was clearly what they had in mind when they were watching this shit. So they don't make enough of a scene to do anything. Then they just walk out, sit on the bench outside, and just glower at everybody, but don't say anything. Like, what the fuck are you doing? Why are you here? If you're not gonna protest it, and you're not gonna watch it, what the fuck are you doing?
I think they were trying to sneak into the next showing.
But why? And they were like, the first thing that one of them said was, what is this? So I thought they were confused, or like maybe they came in early for a different movie, but I mean, like, the same one theater will play the one movie all day, so no.
Maybe they were waiting for a movie to show, or they just got out of a movie and were like,
let's just wander into another theater and poke our heads in and loudly and obnoxiously for everybody to hear talk about what we're seeing.
Yeah. Don't be that guy.
But like I said, they weren't in the theater. They weren't near the seats. They weren't in the audience. They were down the tunnel by the door.
Yeah.
And we could all hear them.
And, like, part of me was just
having
like,
a private conversation.
Part of me was like, just sit down. Just watch the movie. I don't give a shit if you paid for it or not. Just, like, shut the fuck up. One way or another.
Yeah. You know what I would have done, though, if they had done, like, some sort of protest or said anything or anything like that?
What?
I would have been like that song, I don't fuck with you.
Oh.
I don't give a fuck.
I probably would have just been like, Hail Beelzebub, oh Satan.
Yeah, you would have done that. You would have started pretending to speak in tongues and shit like that.
Oh my god, it would have been great.
You would have done that. I would have just been like, fuck off, you guys. Like, I really don't care.
I've been really tempted to do that, like, some deeply religious church, just like start speaking in tongues.
Okay. You do that.
At like a random moment.
I will say that is something that I do feel about. It's one of the few things about religion I do actually feel is I really dislike being in places of worship of any kind. I feel like it's really rude to be a non-believer in that space, because I think that is something that people in general, I'm not going to say on a case-by-case basis, but in general, that is where they go to have their religious whatever. They go there to worship and to be together and have their community and have this spirit with them and feel the love of their God and whatever the fuck. I don't buy into any of that, and I feel wrong for being there, interrupting all this shit. I mean, I'm not doing anything, but you know, I just think I think it's disrespectful when I do that, and I try not to do that whenever I can. I try to let people have their space to feel and believe whatever they want. Because inherently, however you look at it, it's a make-believe friend or whatever, as long as you're not doing stupid shit to other people and being a shitty person, do it. And there's nothing wrong with that, and I will respect you in whatever you believe, and that's fine. You know, once you're a shitty person, it really doesn't even have anything to do with your faith. It has to do with the fact that you're a shitty person. If you try to use religion as an excuse, you're still just being a shitty person. It's not God's fault or Jesus' fault or whatever.
Yeah, I agree with that sentiment.
Yeah. So, I mean, yeah, even if you would do that as like a prank, I personally am like, no, people go there to do their thing. It's fine.
All right, guys, thanks for listening. Hail Satan.